PMI's new product, VitaC Feedlock, delivers medium-chain fatty acids formulated specifically to address risk factors in feed. In our challenge studies, VitaC Feedlock addresses those risks, allowing pigs to maintain their performance and keep on track for our producers. VitaC Feedlock is formulated specifically to close the gap. To learn more, check out our website at pmiadditives.com and click the VitaC tab.
All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Our first speaker today is Diane Bettine with LB Pork. Diane is the Human Resource and Office Manager for LB Pork in Northrop, Minnesota. In addition to HR duties, she supervises the 2 office employees, oversees financial accounting, and wears many other hats as needed. Diane also owns a nursery barn leased by LB Pork. Some of you may also know her children. Tyler works for NPPC as the Director of Producer Services, and Marissa is a swine key account manager for Kemin Industries. Diane has been involved in the pork industry for many years. She was the president of the Minnesota Pork Producers Association in 2002, served on the National Pork Board from 2003 to 2009, and chaired the Domestic Marketing Committee from 2010 to 2012. Diane also served as a 2-year term on the National Pork Board Nominating Committee and is currently the NPPC Labor Security Task Force. She remains active in her local and state pork organizations. So help me welcome Diane.
Thank you. I haven't spoken in front of a crowd in a long time, so bear with me. And my son, who does a lot more presentations than I do, tells me my slides are way too wordy. So I just said that's just what I do, and bear with it. So I just want to talk about, we've had a lot of success and a lot of trauma with visas these last couple of years especially, but we really enjoy the workforce that we bring, and I get so many questions from people. So I'm going to start with a little bit about what we do, who LB Pork is, what we do, and then leave some time for questions. And if you have questions in between, go ahead and raise your hand. So LB Pork, we're in Martin County, which is the #1 pork producing county in Minnesota. It's somewhere in the top 10 in the country. So lots of pigs, not so many people. So bringing in a workforce is very important. They started actually in 1920. They wanted to celebrate their century farm last year, but due to COVID, we're having a great big party August 7th. So that takes up part of my time as well. We started getting international workers long before I came, of course, but in 1993, one of my bosses, Lynn, spent 6 months in Denmark as a through University of Minnesota MAST, as an agricultural trainee. So then when he came back to help run the farm, they started doing it at LB Pork. So they started in 97 with a trainee from Denmark, and we just had our 154th foreign worker arrive in February. This is our map. We keep this in our small conference room where we have pictures of all the guys that have came from all the different countries. We've had 6 continents. I don't think we're going to get to 7, and 21 countries. Right now I'm working on a couple young men are supposed to be coming on a J1 from Jamaica, but with the embassy issues, which I'm going to talk about later, we haven't quite got Jamaica yet, but I'm working on it. So we're unique in a lot of ways compared to most pork companies. A lot of people are hiring foreign workers for working on sow farms, where language isn't quite as much of a barrier because they have, they're in one place. Our sow farms, we are members of 3 sow farms, but they're all managed by other companies. So what I'm hiring for is wean to finish, which means our guys have to drive around and interact. They have to be able to speak English. And I'll talk more about that later. So in 2021, we're going to market about 210,000 pigs. We have 50 sites. Only 15 of them are contract grower arrangements. The nurseries and the all grow finish sites are all managed by our employees, trainees. And we span about a 60-mile radius that they have to drive to. We don't manage the sows, like I said, but we mill and deliver all our feed. We load and haul all the pigs. We have our own maintenance department. We have our own shop, which is much needed because there's usually between 40 and 50 pickups running around the countryside that they have to keep running, and sometimes that's interesting. We have 31 full-time workers, including my bosses, and usually 4 to 6 part-timers. 21 of those right now are U.S. citizens. Usually my percent is a little higher foreign, but we've just had more trouble getting people lately. We have 3 with green cards. I'm just starting on the 6th green card that I have in process, permanent residency. We have 1 here on H-2A visa for crops and manure, 7 currently on TN visas, and 3 J1 trainees through MAST and CAP. When I started working with LB Pork in March of 2013, my only HR experience was a little recruiting, but I knew the pork industry. So this can be learned. Anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. But it is definitely a process, a learning process for sure. Our foreign worker program, again, we're unique. We have 3 houses for our foreign workers, 2 in town with a capacity of about 10, 1 at a barn site, capacity of 6. I've got 12 guys in housing right now. We provide the housing, the utilities, the internet, TV. We do charge them $75 bi-weekly rent. Because if you don't charge something, then you need to put a value on their W-2 for providing housing, and I'd rather just charge a minimal rent and be done with it. Each employee has a pickup for work. There's a car they can use to get groceries if they don't have their own vehicle. We used to, when we were smaller, we provided all their groceries, and we really just stopped that. And we also provided personal vehicles for them to share, but we ended up with things happening with the personal vehicles that shouldn't, and buying all the groceries just got to be too much to handle. So we just gave them all a raise and made our starting wage a little higher, and they have to go buy their groceries now. It was quite the traumatic event for the ones that were in process, but I think as we go, everybody will be fine with it. I also have to help get them all their Minnesota driver's license within 2 months of arrival. They can drive for 2 months on their home country license, but after that, they have to have the Minnesota. So I start them right away because some of them, I've had guys take 5 times to pass the permit test. And even they can take it in Spanish, but when I have people from Brazil, they can't take it in Portuguese. If I have people from Ukraine, they can take it in Russian, but they can't take it in Ukrainian. So it's a lot more studying, and then typical people who haven't taken a test for a while, they think, oh, it's just going to be easy. So they don't study. And I tell them before they come, I send them the links, and I say, you have to get your driver's license. You need to study. It's a hard test. They don't study. They come in. They take it the first time. They fail. Then they start to study. So that's always a interesting part of the initiation. I also take them to get their social security numbers and their bank accounts. We do end up with about a 25% turnover rate, which industry-wide is not bad, but it's a planned turnover. When I'm using the J1s, I know they're going to be here for this year, and then I have to have new ones coming in to replace them. It's not Joe was a no-show, no-call, decided he wanted to go on vacation instead of work, got to find somebody to replace them. How many of you are currently using visa workers? I'm just curious. Are any of you using TNs? Okay. How about H-2As? J1s? Okay, no one on the J1s. And then any of you went through the green card process? Okay. So a few of you have had some experience with this. So now on to some of the details. We do go through agencies for our J1 and our H-2A visas. We use an immigration attorney for the green card process. Before I came to LB Pork, they tried to do some of it on their own. It just ends up, there's so many details. If you don't have every I dotted and T crossed, they get sent back and it just delays things. So we did go to doing the agencies for both the H-2As and for the green cards. The J1 program, you have to go through an accredited agency. It's a government cultural exchange program, so you can't do that on your own. I do manage the entire TN visa process myself in-house. I find that one very easy to do just on my own. instead of paying somebody to do it. So that one I do myself. The TN visa is part of NAFTA, and the applicants have to be professionals, bachelor's degree or equivalent. Most of our TN visa holders have vet degrees in Mexico, which is not the same as a vet degree here, but it's that professional degree, professional certificate that they have to have. The TN visa paperwork is the easy part. The recruitment is what we've struggled with over the years, but there are some TN visa websites, Facebook pages that you can look at, post on. We've used some outside recruiters. Right now we have a current employee that we've gotten a green card for that's from Monterrey, Mexico, that's doing some recruiting for me. And he's actually doing a really good job. He's reaching out, he's doing some of the talking them through some of the in-country stuff, and it's working out quite well. We request a resume, set up a Skype interview. I always have a Spanish-speaking employee with me to translate if needed. I say some of them have some English already. Most, I'm finding, don't have much English, but we tell them they need to learn English when they get here, that they should practice ahead. We explain the requirement. We check the requirements, make sure that they're eligible. I have a list of things that I want to know about them and that I think they need to know about us before we bring them. And if it's acceptable, I have them email me the passport and credentials information. I do the letters and all the paperwork that's required to go with it, most of which you can use over and over again. And our out-of-pocket cost to do the TN visa with just the visa fee and postage is less than $250, not counting what I pay for recruiting. So it's actually pretty reasonable price-wise. The J1 program, this is where LB Pork started. It's still kind of the backbone of our foreign worker program. Unfortunately, with COVID, the J1 program was not allowed for like a year. It was one of the visas that was banned during COVID, and we're still finding it's very difficult for them to get in and get embassy appointments and all of that. I did get my last J1 prior to COVID, got in just under the wire like last May, and I got my first one back again, he actually is a return J1, but he showed up about a month ago, and then I just got another one yesterday. Both of them are from Colombia. That's where I'm having the best luck right now. So many of the countries, they can't get embassy appointments. So if they can't get an embassy appointment, they can't get here. But we've been having good luck with the embassies in Colombia. And I have I've had a number of J1s from Colombia that want to come back. And I'll talk a little bit about more of that in a second. So we use both MAST out of the University of Minnesota and CAEP out of Fergus Falls, CIAP, as the guys call it. We have good luck with both of them. For the J1 program, and I should just add to that, some of them have different presences in different countries. So we get a lot of Brazilians. We had Brazilians early on. We're used to that culture. We like that culture. We've had a lot of Brazilian workers, so the communication is good. But MAST is much more predominant in Brazil than CAP. Whereas some of the other countries, it seems like CAP has a different, process or presence there. So that's why we go back and forth between the two. For the J1 program, you need to have a training plan once you have it set up, which is not that difficult. They'll help you through it. But once you have that set up, you only have to revisit it to see if things change. You can keep using the same training plans. You need to have multiple ones in case you want to bring somebody back. Because if you want to bring someone back after 2 years, or depending on whether they're a trainee or an intern, which I've done this now for 8 years, and I can't tell whether they're going to be a trainee or an intern. I just leave that up to the people at the agency, because it seems like every time I try and guess, I guess wrong. And sometimes one of them can stay a little bit longer. But then if you want to bring them back, you need to have different steps for them to go through. You can't be bringing them back to learn the same stuff. So you want to have multiple sections of your training plan so that you can have some advancement if you want to bring them back. They send out applications for me to review. if it's just a brand new J1. And then you just look them over, and I always Skype with them. Lots of the J1s I'm getting now, they're not just what I say the cold call where I get an application sent to me. It's because we've had so many foreign workers over the years. It's word of mouth. They say, Diane, they message me. I'm always getting messages from the Philippines or Colombia or Brazil. I'm talking to people all over all the time, and they're like, I got a friend, do you think, you have a spot for them? So I get a lot of them now where they contact me and want to come to LB Pork, and then I contact MAST or CAP and say, okay, I've got so-and-so in Brazil. They're going to be putting their application in. Send them my way. So that works out really well. Once I Skype with them, like I said, I have a list. I let them know, for one thing, that they're not going to be working with sows. Some have a certain education that they want to, they want to learn about. Okay, so we don't do sows. So if they want to come and learn about working on a sow farm, they don't want to come to LB Pork. So I have things that I mentioned. They're going to be living with other people. You're going to have to clean. You're going to have to pick up after yourself. You're going to have to learn English. You're going to have to get a driver's license, all those things they talked about. If the interview goes well and I accept them, you just sign the documents and the agency arranges for their arrival. They charge a $100 placement fee, monthly fee of $75 a month while they're there. Now the J1 is also paying fees, so they're paying to be there, and you're paying for them to be there. So it's kind of a double fee structure. The J1s are responsible for their own travel and insurance, and you can have them normally for up to a year. Like I said, they can come back, but usually they have to be out of the country 2 years before they can come back again. But it's amazing how time flies. And then we end up with a lot of them that come back. And my managers love that because then they don't have to retrain them. That's the issue with having the rotating guys every year is you got to be constantly training. But as we know in this industry, turnover is high anyway. So you're constantly training or retraining someone that had bad habits from where they were before. So training is not that bad of a deal. You're responsible for teaching them about raising pigs and giving them the opportunities to learn our language and culture. It's not supposed to be, they don't even, if you have a visit from the State Department, they don't even really like them to be called employees. They're on a cultural exchange. They're working while they're learning. They have to be able to have some free time to experience culture. And some companies do better at that than others. I've always felt LB Pork is one of the best, which is why I think we get so many of them that want to come, and they want their friends to come because they know that we do try and do the cultural and the training piece. We try and do it right. So that's the J1s. H2A, this program is for seasonal ag labor. Unfortunately, livestock, pig farming is not seasonal. Used to be back in the day, you used to be able to say, well, we need them seasonally because, they have to free up the owners for field work, that kind of things. But now it's like, no, you have to be bringing them for seasonal work. So crops, we do have grow corn, soybeans, and also have the manure hauling. So that's where we can utilize the H2A. Right now I have one. So there is pending legislation to make this visa available for livestock farmers, which I will talk about a little bit. I will say I started at LB Pork in 2013, and when I started, they said they're supposed to be making this program so that it can be seasonal. So here we are 8 years later. We use an agency, Global Workforce, in Fergus Falls, and they do the paperwork, and we apply for them to be here from February 1 to December 1. Lots of times they don't get here till April. We've had H2As from the Philippines not get here till May, just because things get tied up in embassy issues again. Philippines is notorious for wanting special. They have such a problem with human trafficking that they're very particular making sure that people are actually coming for what they say they're coming for, and it can take quite a while to get all the I's dotted and T's crossed. So they don't really end up being here for 10 months. They end up being there for 8.5 months, 7 months, just depending on how long the process takes. It's very frustrating. But they do help a lot with the manure hauling in the fall. And actually, I have a couple of Filipinos that have been on H2A with us before, and they did a lot of manure hauling and that, maintenance on machinery and such. Well, then the Philippines were removed from the approved H2A list. There's a list that comes out every January on what countries you can use the H2A visa for, and the Philippines were always on it. Well, that got pulled off 2 years ago, got pulled off the approved list. And then in January, when it came up again this last year, the Philippines did not get put on for H2As, but they did get put on for H2Bs, which means they can come work in resorts and that kind of thing, but they can't come work on the farm. So we've actually started the green card process for those 2 Filipinos, even though, it's a lot longer when you're trying to do it from in their country. But they're just a valuable part of our team, and if that's going to be the only way we can be sure we can get them here, we'll just get them here permanently. The problem with both the TN visa and the H2A when you're working on, and probably the J1s if you're going to work on a green card for somebody, is technically these are all temporary visas, work visas. It's not really supposed to be meant to be something permanent. So you run the risk if you start a green card for someone that you're not going to be able to get them back on the temporary work visa, because they'll say, well, no, you're not really wanting to be temporary, you want to come permanent. So there's always that risk that in the meantime, while you're going through this green card process, you're not going to be able to get them back at all. Let's see. This visa is a lot more expensive than the J1 because you have to pay their travel, whereas the J1s pay their own. You have to provide the housing, which we do anyway, and then you have to pay a designated wage, so you get told what you're going to pay them. So it's not where you can follow your normal pay scale. It's just that this is the wage and this is what you're going to do. So plus you have all the fees involved, which you have to pay like $500 to Homeland Security, and then you're paying the placement fee through Global Workforce, and then you also are paying the $75 a month to Global Workforce to have them there, and so it adds up to quite a bit more than the J1 program. What we like about it is it lets us bring back former trainees that can't come back again on a J1. They know our operation. We know we can trust them with the farm equipment. And we're hoping, that we can get it, that the law gets changed. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So a couple of these next slides are actually old. I did a presentation a couple years ago when I first went on the Labor Security Task Force. And I just stole them from that presentation. So I'm not sure that this is still exactly the makeup. I know Roy Lee is now with North Dakota Pork Council. Orlando's actually sitting right there. But this is a group of us, and it's all been done over conference call, but MPPC has kind of been picking our brains on what we need in visas and what we're seeing out in the country. And we basically just do calls, and they keep us posted on what's happening with the legislation. I'm probably represent the smallest farm on there, but I think my percent of foreign workers is probably as high or higher than anybody. So, and this is one of the reasons why it's so important when we all know it's even worse now. This is 13 to 17, what the labor market looks like in rural America and why we need people that are willing to come and work. So here's where we're at right now with the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. That's the current legislation that's before Congress. It creates a certified ag worker program that provides status to certain ag undocumented workers. It also partially opens the H2A visa program to year-round employees, subject to a 20,000 worker cap, at least half of which is reserved for dairy. It allows for 3-year visas instead of 10 months. So that's huge. That makes it more like the TN program, which the TNs, you can get them from 1 to 3 years. I found that even though we always send for 3 years on the TN, sometimes they get approved for 3, sometimes they get approved for 1, but it kind of goes by what's on their I-94, not necessarily what's in their passport. So that would be a huge improvement. It simplifies the process, makes the wage determinations more equitable, and this has passed the House. It's awaiting to be heard in the Senate. I'm hoping it's going to be introduced. It looks like a senator from Indiana and a senator from Colorado. We really need to talk to our legislatures, especially our senators, about the importance of passing this and the importance of passing it without a cap. Because we all know what the labor needs are out in the countryside, in 10,000 workers, which is also opened up to other people who can get H-2As, is not going to be enough. Not even a drop in the bucket to what we need for bringing people in. And livestock agriculture needs access to year-round labor, not seasonal. So that's an important piece. So what works? So what we found with our foreign workers is it's a reliable workforce. They show up to work every day. I don't have to worry about, they rarely will call in sick. Rarely do they miss, they'll ask for vacation. They do it how they're supposed to. One thing you'll find is when they take a vacation, they're not going to take 2 weeks generally. If they're going back to Mexico or whatever, they're probably going to take 3 weeks. We've always been really flexible with letting them have unpaid time just because we want them to be happy. Lots of them are coming without their families. So we want them to be able to go back and see their family and have a relaxing vacation. But I have to tell them, you can't work so many hours. We're paying overtime. Minnesota, I don't know how many of you are from Minnesota, but in Minnesota we have to pay overtime in agriculture. A lot of the country does not have to do that. We do. So it's like, no, you can't just keep working. You have to go home and take a break. We don't want to pay that much overtime. The J1 program allows you to bring young people from around the world. We've seen different skill sets and work habits between the different countries. It's really kind of fun to see how, I know you shouldn't pigeonhole, but how certain cultures, have certain, the Brazilians are very outgoing and high energy, and the Ukrainians are very private and quiet, and it's just fun to kind of see the differences. I know Anisha's been around our place often enough. You see, look at the difference between Renato and Buddy, Anisha. So it's a lot of fun. And even though the J1s are only here for a year, like I said before, it's planned turnover. So you can be, planning ahead of it. The TN program is easy to use. Many willing participants, if you have a way to find them, that's the key. It's worked out real well. Now, what we struggle with, and some of this I've already touched on, but embassy issues in politics has been the biggest hurdle this last year. When you have, people go, you interview them, you make an appointment, they make an appointment at the embassy, and then all of a sudden it's canceled, it's pushed out a couple months. If even, like in Brazil right now, the embassies are all closed. They're saying they're going to open. I've heard August and I've heard November, but I know I have J1s that were supposed to be here already last year, that I have one of them that now he has an embassy appointment in Brazil for next January. So that's really been a struggle. Philippines is always a struggle at the embassies. So that's probably the biggest what if when you're planning for workers is, will they be able to get the visa? And yet sometimes they just get an interviewer that's having a bad day, and they'll say, oh no, you're missing this one little thing, or, oh no, and then they go and then they apply for another appointment, and usually they'll get through on the second or third try. I had a TN visa holder that had gotten told no in one embassy. He made another appointment, went to a different embassy, and I just got word yesterday that he was approved. So sometimes it's a longer process than it should be. Getting back the good ones, sometimes you just have, oftentimes we'll just have great guys, but then they have to go home, and you have to wait 2 years to get them back. And that's why we really want the fixed H2A program, because then we could bring them back on the H2A. Because, they're just, like I say, they're great people. Housing, think about it. Okay, so these guys live together and they work together. Sometimes it can be a little bit of friction. We really don't have near as much of that as you would think. Our biggest problem is you have some people that are really particular and others that are kind of slobs. So then that's a problem, because then the house, then I have to go in and say, well, we call it power wash day. So we make them take the afternoon off because we're not going to pay them to clean their house. And I go in with all the rooms of the house, and I draw names out of a hat. I say, oh, you get the kitchen. You get the bathroom. And I show them how to clean, and we make them clean. And then when one gets done, they got to go help the others, because otherwise, sometimes it gets really bad. So we just say, it is what it is. So I've got one scheduled for next week. So it'll be interesting. Language, since we have many different countries, our guys are not working in a central location where you can have one or two translators. They have to learn English. So this has been one of our biggest struggles, because some people learn another language easier than others. I mean, for some of them, it's truly a struggle. For others, they just don't try hard enough. And, we used to use the radios a lot, but now we're using more phones. At least they can, you translate and put it into the phone. But, Lynn and Lonnie, who are my bosses, they need to be able to tell things to the guys. And, so when there's that language barrier and they have the barrier to wanting to learn, that's when we have the biggest struggle there. But they are forewarned before they come that we are not one of those places where you can just come and work with other people from your country and not learn English. If that's what you want, there's plenty of other places you can go be a TN or a J1. You come to LB Pork, you need to learn English. Driver's license, like I said, they can drive legal for 2 months. I'm kind of a stickler on getting them in there, and I've had my moments of, am I going to survive? Because I make them drive when we go for the driving test, and I tell them some tips. And yeah, we had one, Jensley from the Philippines. I truly did think I was going to die, but but he was such a sweet boy. I couldn't get too mad at him. But he actually, the first time he took the behind the wheel test, he did like 3 illegal things, and it was an automatic fail. Took him 4 times to pass the driving, 5 times to pass the written, 4 times to pass the driving. That was a struggle. Green cards, like I said, we often get green cards for the workers, but it's a long and expensive process. The last one I did was about $12,000. And it's just going up. It's like, well, you need a waiver for the 2-year rule. Oh, you need something for this. And again, it can be political. The timelines get longer or shorter, depending on, how many, COVID, of course, made everything draw out a little longer. So that's a problem. But why it's all worth it? Great work ethic, and almost everybody we bring. We have very few that we have problems with work ethic. They're amazing people. It's great fun to learn about their cultures, especially if you want to travel. Oh, I did forget one of the drawbacks. A lot of our guys do bring their spouses and their families. And one thing that's a problem is, when a person is here on a work visa, the spouse has just a spousal or a family visa, so they can't work. So to get them to assimilate into the community is much harder, because if they can't get out and work and they don't learn English as fast, they speak, they're going to speak their home language in their house. We would if we were living in a different country. So not getting out, being able to get out and work, they just don't get that chance to assimilate into the community like they would. So one of our biggest problems is keeping those families and spouses happy. Most of our workers that we've lost is because the spouse wants to be somewhere else. So that's a huge problem. But they're They are a lot of fun. I've had a lot of really good Mexican food and Filipino food. And last night I got Brazilian barbecue because a couple of my past young men are here going to the University of Iowa. So they're like, oh, Diane, you got to come. So I got barbecue last night. So the cultures and the food is a lot of fun. And I've also traveled, went to Europe a few years back, and we went from past J1 to past J1 and got to see their home farms. And so there's just so many advantages to the program beyond just the work ethic. And our team becomes a family. Since most of the people don't have family here, they, we're their family. So we try and do a lot of group events and get together. My boss, Lonnie, his goal is to get together and have a Monopoly night with every single foreigner that comes. And then he does Texas Hold'em tournaments. And yeah, we have volleyball, and yeah, we have a lot of fun. So after this last little bit, actually this came from Orlando a few years back. I was speaking at Pork Management Conference, and he asked me, he said, so Diane, what do you like about having all the foreign workers? And he said, I get to be mom. It's fun. My kids are, in their 30s, so now I get to be mom to all these neat young people. And he said, well, what is it that you don't like? I said, I have to be mom. Because I do. And sometimes, I'm you got to go to Diane's office, kind of like going to sit in the corner. So that's the good and the bad about that. But yeah, so I think that's the end. So we have lots of, let's see, what time do we start? We have time for questions?
So we do have time. Hold on. We have time for a few questions, and we have a wireless mic, so if you could hold on to your question until that's brought around.
So I know that with the TN visa, there is that option to keep extending out for year after year. How many of your employees on that visa utilize that option?
Our first couple of TNs, we did a few TNs, and then we were almost all J1s, and we just kind of ramped back up again on the TNs. But we did that with both of the first two. One, actually we've done it with others. We did two where we did the paperwork and they stayed in the States. That's more expensive. A lot of times they'll just go back to Mexico and renew there, and it's a lot less expensive than going through all the paperwork. I did have, the first one, he actually did the paperwork, most of the paperwork himself. The second one, I did have an attorney. We kind of put it together, but I had an attorney look it over to make sure we were doing it properly. Nice thing about doing it is, even though it usually takes longer to get it done, if you do it through the extension process stateside, once you've filed that, they're still legal to work while you're waiting for that process. For the most part, I think you've got like 6 months. They're still legal to work while you're waiting for it. So it is, there's two different ways to handle that. One's cheaper and faster, and one keeps them stateside.
Then, another quick question is, are you recruiting men and women? Have you had both?
We tend to recruit mainly men just because of our housing situation. We don't have separate, you're supposed to have separate housing and separate bathrooms, or not separate housing, but separate bathrooms and all that. So we've tended to recruit mainly men for that reason. Plus, being we're weaned to finish, we have actually some females working in our nurseries, American females working in the nurseries, but for loading pigs and all that, it's just a little less attractive to the women, so they don't tend to be as interested in that kind of work.
Do you have any idea what the conversion rate is like for green cards of anybody that comes back? Do you have any percentages on that of employees that were able to come back from some of those visas?
Well, we kind of pick and choose, so I can't really give a percentage. We've had, like I said, we've had 154 foreign workers. I've got 3 green cards working for me, 3 people we've gotten green cards for working for me right now. I have 4 others that we had gotten them for, and then they have since, one went back to Brazil because his wife didn't want to be here. One, his wife got a nursing degree while he was here, and then they moved to Rochester so she could work for Mayo, some of those kind of things. So I've gotten 7 out of those 154, and I'm working on 6 more.
And then you mentioned too about the spousal, I guess, I don't know if differences is the word, but are there any efforts your company is, and you think the industry as a whole are navigating towards that? Because I know I work for a pork company too. I know that that's a barrier in some capacities, but what are you guys doing to help with that? Because I think everyone's dealing with it, but do you guys have any efforts currently?
Well, we've got, most of our guys right now do not have their spouses here. The ones that do, we've gotten them the green, we get the green cards. When we do a green card for someone, we make them sign an agreement that they will work for us for 5 years or else pay us back, because it's such an outlying of expense. And you can't say, you have to work for us for 5 years, but I can say, you have to work for us for 5 years or pay us back. We don't pay for the spouses and family, we pay for the employee, but really the cost of the spouse and family is minimal. We just encourage that if they want to bring their families, that they can. Then they have to find their own housing, but we help them find the housing. It's just so hard to be away from your family for that long. So if you want them long term, I think it's the only way to go. But it is really, really hard in some cases to get them to assimilate. I know my employee that's doing the recruiting for me, he's been at LB Pork almost as long as me. It'll be 8 years in July. And his wife is just finally starting to get conversational, kind of conversational in English. So that's, I think, the biggest struggle. And we encourage, that they take lessons. We encourage that they get involved, but you can't make that happen. So, and when we have LB Pork get-togethers, we tell everybody you need to speak English at those, and they still end up in their little groups of, So it's really difficult, and we have not found the right answer.
Thank you. Diane, thank you first.
No heckling.
No heckling. Thank you first for all the work that you all do at LB Pork. I know for a fact how impactful that has been to many of the employees you've had throughout the years. So my question is about the J1. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you can wait 2 years to bring them back. Mm-hmm. Will you explain a little bit about that? There's a requirement, right? They either have to be in school or out of school for a certain amount of time.
Or
how does the 2 year?
So they either have to be in school or out of school within a certain time, or have 5 years experience. They don't necessarily have to have went to school in agriculture. They could have 5 years of ag experience. So if they had a family farm and worked for their grandparents or something, that could be 5 years of experience. So not all of them have been in school. The 2 year gets really confusing because there's this 212E that's in some of the visas that says it's a 2 year requirement, and that's what we have to get the waiver for in some of the green card processes. But then there's also another 2 year that's more part of that country's rules that's saying, no, you just can't go back for 2 years. So, and it gets really confusing to the guys because they'll say, no, I didn't have that in my passport. Why do I have to wait 2 years? That's because that's just part of the J1, how the J1 program works. They don't want you to be constantly coming back because they want you to learn things, go back to your country, and then you can come back to learn more, but they don't want you to be a continuous. It's supposed to be an educational process to improve ag, cultural exchange, improve things in their country. So, and I always just, if I have someone that contacts me and they want to come back, I just send an email off to, whichever program they came through and said, okay, so-and-so was here this time, they want to come back. Do they have to wait? Because sometimes they don't. If they're still going to school or they qualify under a certain area, then they don't have to wait the 2 years. Most of them do. So I just shoot off the email and say, okay, does this young man have to wait 2 years, or can he come back now and Usually it's the 2 years, but I always try.
Okay, we have time for maybe one more question. Okay, then let's thank our speaker.